I've been on the hunt to find an affordable webcam that can compete with my regular $5,000 video call setup, but one that's more portable and easy to use when I'm on the go. I need this webcam to really do three things. First, it needs to have really good image quality. It doesn't have to be best of the best, but very good. Second would be some customizable settings so I can dial in my creative look, but not be overly complex. And third would be a quality audio setup so I don't have to lug around a massive kit for my video calls. And when you look at what just slid across my desk this morning from Hollyland, this is their Hollyland Lyra, and this is their most affordable webcam at only $149. When you first open up the box, you'll see that Hollyland Lyra webcam right away, and you'll notice that it's a really compact rectangle shape. It looks more like an action camera than it does a traditional webcam. So first impressions, I'm loving the size of this webcam. We chose the option that comes with the Lark A1 wireless transmitter, so we'll test that out in just a little bit. You'll also get all the necessary cables to power everything and plug this into your computer. You also get a magnetic mounting option that also comes with a little 1/4-inch thread on the bottom, so you can screw this onto a tripod if you want, or it can just clip directly onto your computer for really fast setup. So setup with the Lyra is really straightforward. All you really need to do is grab that USB-C cable that they've included, plug that into the back of the Lyra, and then plug the other end directly into your computer, and then open up your preferred recording or streaming software, and then select the Lyra as your camera input, and you should be able to see your feed. If you do want a little bit of privacy, that lens physically rotates to block out the camera, so you don't have to use any software to block out. There's a nice little privacy cover if you just twist that lens. So I just got everything set up for the first time, and this is what the image quality looks like with no lighting on. So it's actually really dark in my corner, and I'm also recording on my Sony FX3, so you can see how dark it actually is. And the Lyra is compensating for that darkness. So this is kind of like worst case scenario. If you have no lighting and you're in like a really dark corner in a studio space, it would look like this. But let's get some of this studio lighting on and see how the image quality looks in a more optimal situation. Okay, now that we've turned on our lights, the image quality obviously is looking way better on the Lyra. And then you can see as it compares to my Sony FX3 that I have right there. This streaming setup right here that I'm using is a $5,000+ setup. And then the Lyra is $159 if you include the Lark A1 kit. So $159 versus $5,000+. You could buy 33 of these setups for the Hollyland Lyra versus buying one of this streaming setup with the FX3. So a pretty insane difference in cost. Now I'm actually recording right now inside of OBS, which is my preferred way of recording anytime I'm using my MacBook Pro to internally record a camera feed. And with the Lyra, you can shoot up to 4K at 30 frames per second. And that's what we're doing for this video. So this is what a 4K image looks like recording inside of OBS. I think it looks pretty solid, honestly. Now the lens of the Lyra is an f1.8 aperture lens. So that's gonna be a little bit better in lower light situations, but also is gonna give you a little bit more depth of field. So as I move back and forth, you can kind of tell like there actually is some depth to this shot. And the autofocus performance actually is pretty good as well. If I like kind of put my hands up here, you'll see it shifts focus to my ring right here, and then I bring it back. Autofocus performance, pretty solid. Now I did add a couple effects that my MacBook has access to when you turn on the webcam feature. So the portrait and studio light modes, but I only turn them on at 1% power because I think they're a little bit overdone if you do it the slider too high. So if I turn this up like really high, I mean, that's way too processed, like it's way too much blur in the background, but at 1%, I do like what it's doing. I'll turn it off and show you. So it's just adding that little subtle blur, turn it back on. I think it's a nice blur at 1% power. Same with the studio light feature. I'll turn it off and show you how it just kind of darkens the background a little bit and then makes me more the focus of the frame. So I think that's a quick way to get even better image quality. If you do have a MacBook, you could experiment with some of these different processing features. Now I do want to go back to this side-by-side split screen here for a second so you can see the difference in image quality between what $5,000+, it's more like probably closer to $6,000 or $5,800 or so with the FX3 setup, and then Lyra's $149. So look at the difference in image quality and color and depth of field even potentially. Yeah, I think if you look closely, of course, there's gonna be a difference between a full frame mirrorless camera and a webcam. But if you're somebody who doesn't care about the best of the best of the best image quality, man, this Lyra actually performs really well, especially for the price of $149. So to go back to answering our 3 criteria that we're measuring, first would be image quality. Does this get a pass for image quality? I think absolutely. I think it's a great looking image, especially considering the cost. Now the second thing we wanted to measure was the customization of this camera, but it not being overly complex for beginners who don't really understand camera settings all that much. What does the Lyra offer in terms of customization here? Well, actually they include the Holly Studio app when you purchase this camera. And this is what that interface looks like. And there's some basic settings that you're actually able to customize in here. The first thing that I think is most important actually is shutter speed. So if you're shooting at 30 frames per second, you always want to double your frame rate, and you can actually control that right here. So I've selected 1/60, which would be double that 30 FPS frame rate. For ISO, I actually kept auto because I think it's doing a good job at automatically adjusting that exposure if needed. For white balance, I did customize that a little bit. Around 5,000 Kelvin or so is what I think looked most natural. And then I adjusted some of these settings a little bit more, but the 2 that I really noticed were saturation and sharpness. So the issue with saturation here is that when I opened up other camera apps like Zoom or QuickTime or OBS, I was noticing that the image looked significantly less saturated than it did inside of this Holly Studio app. So I increased the saturation just a little bit, and I think it looks oversaturated in the Holly Studio, but it looks more proper and maybe even a little undersaturated in other camera apps. And then the sharpening too was a big one. I lowered the sharpening a ton. I think it comes set to like 50, which is just way too sharp for me. I lowered that to 3. And then if I need to add some sharpening and clarity back after the fact, I of course can do that in my preferred video production editing software like Adobe Premiere. But I don't really want to bake that look in at the very beginning, so I lowered that for myself. If you go over to this field of view slider as well, you can add this smart framing feature if you just click this headshot. And it's going to kind of track you as a headshot, almost as if you like had a camera operator. If I kind of like move over to this side of the frame, it'll track me. Move over here, it'll track me. If I kind of zoom back, it'll try to like recompose the shot to keep this same frame, which is super interesting. If I kind of come back a little bit closer, it'll re-widen out the shot. So kind of cool, you have a little built-in camera operator if you're somebody who needs to move around a little bit more in your live streams or video calls. And then beyond that, you can actually add some preset scene sizes, which are pretty cool. So if I go over here to this button and just click plus, it will add a scene based on my current compositional settings. And then let's say I wanted to add like a tight shot. Maybe I had like a whiteboard or something in my frame I was teaching on, and it was like over to this side. And I just like set this frame size. I can click this plus button again, and now I have 2 separate scenes. If I was like instructing and have like a whiteboard over here I'm showing, I could show that. And then if I wanted to come back to the wide composition, I just click scene 1 again, and there you have it. Kind of a cool feature that you can build multiple scenes just right here in this software. Now there were a few quirks when I was trying to get this software up and running. Like I would open up the software and all of a sudden everything just turned green and the camera was not responsive. And I'd have to like unplug the camera and restart everything and plug it back in order to get it to work. So that was a little bit strange, but overall for that second criteria we were measuring of does this camera have customization to its look and settings? Yes, it does. And is it easy to use? I'd say it's fairly easy to use for beginners. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a pass for that second criteria. Now that last criteria we wanted to measure was audio quality and features. Are there enough options here for creators who don't want to have to lug around a massive audio interface or podcast microphone to get good audio? Can you just rely on the built-in tools that this system comes with? Well, I think one of the most unique selling points of the Lyra is that it does have a built-in audio receiver that pairs seamlessly with the Lark A1 system, which is actually what I'm using right now to record this video. This is great for video creators and online coaches who want to increase their audio quality, but still be a little bit mobile and free and not like tied down right to a podcast microphone that's like right in front of their face. This you just clip right onto your shirt. It's so lightweight, you won't even really notice it's there, and it's gonna improve your overall sound. There is also noise cancellation that you can leverage with this system. Even the Lark A1 has noise cancellation directly. So I'll start a fan app on my phone right here on the table. You can hear how loud and obnoxious that is. That would be so loud, like if a leaf blower was right outside your house or something. And I'll go ahead and click the noise cancellation on by just clicking this button once. The light turns green on the transmitter. And now this is the noise cancellation. Just listen. Pretty solid. And I'll go ahead and turn it back off. And that's what it sounds like with it off. And then if you wanted to rely on the internal microphone that the Lyra has, you can actually just turn this off, And then after about 2 seconds, OBS realizes that this mic turned off and it defaults to the internal microphone of the Hollyland Lyra. So that's what you're hearing right now. And I think the internal mic actually sounds pretty solid out of the Lyra compared to some other webcams that I've used. But typically, the closer you can get a microphone to your mouth, the better it's going to sound. So I would almost always pair the Lark A1 with the Lyra if I can. But if you need to rely on that internal mic, it's a pretty good option as well. So the fact that you can add the Lark A1 to this kit for only an additional $10 makes it a pretty incredible value. And overall, there are some quality audio options with the Hollyland Lyra system. So if you want to check out this Lyra webcam, I'll link it down in the description below so you can take a look. And if you want to check out our dedicated review on the Lark A1 microphone, I'll actually link that right here on screen so you can check that out. And I'll see you in the next one.